Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share an update on my experience with the Rylo. This is a 360-degree 4K video camera. It also shoots stills as well as 180-degree wide-angle video, and it was furnished to me a while back by the manufacturer, a startup, and I have to say it's a fantastic product. I'm finally giving you an update on my experience with it because I finally have had a chance to put it down, and that's because I traveled for about a month and a half around the world. Didn't think that this would become the go-to that it did, and it ended up leaving me wishing that I had more batteries, which I did get another one, and I highly recommend a spare battery if you plan on using this. Now remember, it does need to be paired up with a mobile device. Editing now has finally become available on the Rylo itself, so you don't have to download every single clip into their application and use it. But let's go ahead and just take a look at what it's capable of. Now, I am in the Rylo app, that is El Castillo at Chichen Itza in Mexico, in the Yucatan, and I'm just panning around. In this hand, I'm not sure what I was holding. There's my mug, as well as my tour guide. Let's not forget him. You can almost see him, and you'll see him through the course of this video. You're not going to be able to hear the audio, I can tell you that now. My better half right there, also shooting. Surprise, surprise. Someone else is using the gear, not just me. And then, of course, bright sun. It was hot as hell, as you might imagine. And if I go ahead and hit play, the video will start to play. And again, in real time, you can pan anywhere you like. I'm getting us a little confused. And you can basically pick any angle that you want, and this is the beauty of the Rylo. Great stabilization. You can see I've got my A7R Mark III in my hand there, and you can always bring this back to point of view with that little indicator there in the left lower hand corner that I just touched. Another great feature, I'm going to pause this. Long touch, any subject, and this is part of Rylo's marketing, but it works, okay? And so now, essentially anything is going to stay locked, or it should, on our subject. Maybe that didn't work correctly. Let's try that again. I had to touch follow this. Excuse me. My mistake. Corrected now. So, even with me in the way, it's attempting to follow, which, of course, it cannot do. And that's why it says following stopped. But I can go ahead and find my subject again somewhere here. There she is. And this will demonstrate better. It says following lost. I'm not sure why. Now it's working. And this generally does work very well outside of, you can see now, I'm not touching anything, and granted, the subject isn't really moving. Now she is. And I am not doing anything. The software is following her wherever she goes. And this is part of what's really great and unique about, you know, the Rylo system. Do I love that all the editing has to be done in-app? Absolutely not. Do I think that it works incredibly well? Yes. And that's one of its benefits. And there you can see I'm sweating to death. And again, shooting simultaneously A7R Mark III, and then my decapitated fingers are holding this bad boy. So it really did travel quite a bit. When I say around the world, I'm not kidding. Europe, Italy, Athens, and of course Greece. So it was Rome, Athens, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, the Dead Sea. This thing really went all over the place. And then, of course, Mexico, which is what we're looking at now. So I have a tremendous amount of Rylo footage, and it really is just a great device. And if I go ahead and pause it right there, you can see at the top, we have the ability to go ahead and trim the shot, play with the speed, fine-tune it, the level, crop, not doing any of that sort of editing. You can also do this, which is an interesting, as well as kind of stupid thing, but so that you can see both the front and rear at the same time. And if you tap it again, it just gives you a wider version of me, as if that was necessary at this point. And then last but not least, split screen, so that you can actually look at what the front camera is filming, as well as what the rear camera lens is filming simultaneously. You still have your point of view to be able to correct it. That is the literal rear point of view of the Rylo at the time that I'm holding it. So that's why it's not on me, but it's actually on my shoulder. It's just how far out I was holding it. Had it been right in front of me, then it would have been a different story. But so very unique, in my opinion. Whole timeline here on the bottom, as you may have already noticed. So we can go ahead and play at that point. It's just very cool. And a great face there again from me. And you can see again, my better half in the distance. And then up here we have the ability, how would you like to save it? So do you want to save it as an HD video? Do you want to save it as a 360 degree video, audio on or off? Easy peasy. Once you hit continue, it'll then start to process it, which if I hit this right now, you'll see that's the next screen that would come up. It takes a while. I'm canceling out of that. And that is the end of the video, thank God, with that face. But again, the beauty of this is its simplicity, mobility, all of those things. And really, if you want to have the ability to put yourself right back, where you were, where you've traveled with the Rylo, it gives you that. And it allows family and friends to share that experience. So it goes beyond a traditional camera like the RX100 Mark VI or any of my interchangeable lens cameras. And that is why I ended up using it so much throughout all of my travel, because consistently I found that there really was a place for it everywhere that I went. And I knew that the only real flaw that I had was battery life with this thing. It did overheat, I'll mention that, but I was in the desert. It overheated here in Mexico, as well as when I was at Masada in Israel near the Dead Sea. So those temperatures were a bit too much, but they were a bit too much for all life forms. And then the other flaw, which, as I mentioned, Rylo has now corrected, was that you could only edit clips once you had downloaded them to your mobile device, iOS or Android. And I kept emailing, asking, there has to be a way to edit it without downloading the clips. Because, for example, if your mobile device, tablet, phone, or otherwise has 64 or 128 gigs, or whatever it may be, with my Note 8, for example, even though I had a 256 gig micro SD card, I could not edit any of the footage. I could not download it from the Rylo to that external drive. It's almost as if Rylo specifically made this for iPhone users. I have no other way, and Pixel users, phones that do not have expandable storage, which I get, but I don't think it would have been very difficult for them to write the code to accommodate that. Instead, they got smart and basically, as I mentioned, now just put out an update not too long ago that you can actually edit directly from the micro SD card on board the Rylo rather than downloading the clips, because essentially once you've downloaded your clips to start editing, your phone has run out of storage. And since you can't use expandable storage, that's where things become very tricky. And that was really the biggest pitfall, but it is a flaw of the Rylo. Now that that is resolved, I can wholeheartedly recommend this. Yes, it's expensive at $499, but what it is capable of is really quite unique. And of course, I have other clips to give you other examples. If I back out, these are all in Mexico. So here is a cenote also at Chichen Itza. And again, just you see my tour guide there, just having this ability, 360 degrees, you want to look at the sky, whatever it may be. I mean, I use this everywhere. The Vatican, he's getting clipped a little bit because he's right at the edge. You can, of course, zoom in, zoom out. You can even take it to the tiny planet mode, which is comical, to say the least. I'm not sure what you would ever really use the tiny planet mode for. I mean, it's cool, but I don't know how much more deformed my head could be right now. Essentially, anyone that's handling the Rylo is going to... Tiny planet, huge head. That is the effect of Tiny Planet, and you can just get rid of Tiny Planet by going back to my sweaty body. But there you have it. My tour guide explaining the cenote, some of the remains that were found there because it was the path to the afterlife. There you see some inspiration for, many movies. I'm not going to even touch that. But there you have it. I mean, the Rylo really is more than proof of concept. I think it's a great product. And again, get an extra battery. The adventure case I wanted to get, but the reality is I'm not sure how it affects its 360 degree capture. Also, dark environments are the Rylo's enemy. Bright light, great stuff. Low light, not so hot. So general tourism, you're going to do great with this. It's going to give you, as I mentioned, everything you want. You'll be able to pull stills out of the video, edit it any way you like. Again, remember, all of the editing has to be done on your iOS or Android device, but thankfully without downloading the clips anymore, because that really was a huge pain and really not practical if you're going to use this in at least the form and fashion that I was, which was traveling around the world. So I'm glad they fixed that. And now it's definitely, in my opinion, a much more complete product for it. But that pretty much covers the Rylo. I'll end up putting footage up eventually once I get through editing it on here. I've got a lot of footage in general to edit, as you might imagine, not just from the Rylo, but just a tremendous amount. And again, the stabilization here, the lock feature, as I can do look here instead. I mean, the following, all these little touches that Rylo integrates are really impressive. And this is without me having to do anything, but it's just a really great piece of hardware. I'm apparently looking there where I touched look here. So really just a great piece of hardware that is complemented by an equally amazing piece of software. And I think this product needs to get a lot more exposure, which is why I'm dedicating this much time to it, because it really has grown over the course of my ownership and my reviewing period, if you will. And it is something that I would recommend, as I mentioned earlier, to anyone. Now, is it better than having a dedicated camera? Completely different concept, in my opinion. But is it great at what it does? Absolutely best in breed right now. So any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.